Bertha has spoken. Recording in progress. What's the date today? Health Alchemy Community Dinner.
12th.
August 12th.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kept hearing about the Lions Gate, but it seemed kind of unspectacular to me. Did anybody feel anything during the Lions Gate on Monday? The big 8/8.
Well, it's still going on.
Oh, it's a period of time.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And
I think that's the peak is the 8th. But yeah, it's still going.
But what are we supposed to experience? Do you have any idea?
It's like a powerful time for manifesting. So whatever you're, whether it's good or bad, it may have more. It might come true.
So be careful what you think.
Right,
it just might come true very quickly.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Well,
Sunday.
that room over there that I practice in has a lot of crystals, a lot of organite, a lot of devices that tell me that I have to be very careful because I'll manifest a darkness around me within seconds if I let it happen,
Yeah.
So I don't like being vigilant. There's two types of living in the spiritual world. One's vigilance and maintaining that vigilance, and I'm going to be present at all costs, and then you get all numb and tight. And then the other side of it is I'm going to let go completely and let the old programming take over, and we all know how that turns out, not good. So there's this gyroscope of discernment, I call it. That's what I teach, is when you're discerning, you know what's so, and you know which way to lean naturally. There's a sort of a water down a mountain kind of feeling. We all know it because it's called the zone, And so it's called, one guy said, he had this horrendous outcome in this book, and he said, yeah, but no one else can do what I'm doing because no one else can live my dharma. I have to live my dharma no matter what it is. And it's like the Jesus moment, where he's like, fuck, I'm going to get crucified, man. I will be done this shit, That's pretty bad, man. I'm getting crucified, Maybe how can I get out of that shit, And then he's like, because that's kind of what we all have, crucifixion moments in our life, right? Don't we? Like, God, I wish I could get out of this somehow. Yeah. But that's the theme of tonight's talk is, again, how do you harvest the light? Or, and I kind of chose this shirt on purpose. This was Annie's gift, Annie Palmer. Thank you, Annie. I still like this shirt. It's kind of stretchy, it has a little bit of that spandex feeling. And it's kind of bright and light. So I guess we're still in summer, which is, the joy, the fire elements at its strongest. So humans harvesting the light, and we've been talking about some darker things about, today's world, for example, but take it full circle. What we were talking about earlier was all this darkness is as dark as I've seen in my life. Like, I never thought I'd talk about this stuff. Actually, I thought that people were never going to catch up, but not that I felt arrogant or anything, but it was like I was just aware of shit that other people weren't. Now they're aware of it, and it's like, so Adishanti is a saying, first of all, that's the kind of the higher you go on your ladder of evolution, the further you can fall with a mistake. So as the joy increases in the dualistic world, so does the potential for pain. Equal and opposite. And you just have to surrender to it, It's like Jungian psychology, the dark and the light. This is the world of dark and light. You can't avoid it because that's the definition of, this is Maya, this is the world of illusion, this is the theater. But there's a transpersonal part that, and so by seeing so many dark things, and I had probably 25 major female heartbreaks in my life, maybe more.
25?
Wow,
At least 25.
That
At least.
is a lot.
Like gut punch, tear your heart out, like, how am I going to live again? Kind of thing. And I keep coming back, man.
Made of titanium or something.
Dude, if some of you got inside my world and you could like hook a wire up, you'd be devastated within 5 seconds. I'll be blunt. I could write 5 books about the last 10 years of my life, let alone the whole 57. So when you survive your trials and tribulations, though, then there's sort of this wisdom that builds despite the exterior and all of its, I really kind of didn't grow up until 4 or 5 years ago, actually, and maybe even a little after that. Even though I was pronounced a man in 2012 with the Mankind Project, I was still like there's the man-child tendencies were just way still in control. And like Drew in our group, I watched him during the C word episode. Many times I was just triggered out of my mind. Like, I watched this woman at the farmer's market, and I'm glad we're being recording. I'm saying this. One of the market managers, I was talking to her, and she says, will you put on your mask, please? And I was on the outside of the fringe of the market on my e-bike, getting ready to leave. And I'm like, no.
Wow.
I looked her in the eye. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna put my mask on.
Wow.
And I had worn it in the market to make them happy for a few minutes, like, okay, I'll play your game, get a little bit of food. And then and he got right in my face. He's like, "You're telling me you're not going to put that mask on?" And I go, "No, I'm not." Looked her right in the eye. No, I'm not putting that mask on. And then I watched her eyes turn reptilian.
Oh, okay.
Something else took over.
Oh,
I got scared at that moment. And then she sort of like, I mean, it was like she was cursing and right in my face. And I was like, but I met it. I didn't budge. I was like, wow, look at that. She's like this far away. And
that is so cool. I'm glad you
fascinated,
because I had heard another story about someone who watched the whole
I
thing
watched her
from-
transform from my very eyes.
Yeah, far out.
And I had it my way. I walked out on my terms. I was like, I'm leaving now. And she kept going as I was driving away. And I was like,
I love it.
but
Can you pass
that's
me
no
that?
longer the person. You guys understand that that's not really her. That's the possession. That's what's on this planet.
Yeah.
That's the darkest of the dark right there. And that's what's running baseline. If you let yourself stay too long on that, I see a lot of possession cases.
Mhm.
I got a Parkinson's case that I'm convinced when she has episodes of anxiety and panic attacks, they're not hers.
Yeah.
And the first question we might ask ourselves when we're in one of those is this mine? Just inquiry is the best way to run the advanced spiritual life.
When we're in it ourselves.
Yeah, but there's something deeper than that. If you don't remember to ask or become aware of the situation, then you're asleep, and then you pray for grace when you're awake. Because when you're asleep, it's over with. You don't wake up until there's a trigger moment, right? And that's the moment where we know where we're at. The unevolved person gets triggered. The next level up is like, it's more neutral. And then the highest level is, oh, what can I do with this? Let's play the game. And I was very fortunate on my path because I wasn't afraid to jump in with the people in the fast lane, but I'm a Taurus, so I'm generally chewing the cud on the sideline, hanging out in the little habit world. But I had enough Gemini friends and Capricorn friends who are more like cardinal signs, and then they'd lead me on a leash, and I'd be like, what am I doing? I'm gonna surf 20-foot waves over the rocks down there? Oh my God. Okay, I'll try. And there's no guts, no glory, we used to say.
Yeah.
And so you really find out how many balls you got in your sacks down there when you're in the face of those moments, And I lived through mine, but the most terrifying experiences were the spiritual ones, far beyond the physical ones, that just realizing those Buddha moments where, because I was fascinated with that story of like, wow, inner demons, and he had to face his own demons. And St. Matthew said, I die daily. Like, what does he mean when he says, I die? Do you really die? Like I was always a curious George. My mom couldn't put up with me. Like, Mom, why is there stars in the sky? And she'd be like, oh my God, how do I answer that question? I don't know, son. I was just that kid that I figured it all out early. And then the adults were like, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. But they're bigger than me, Now I'm the big guy. And so the kids are like, I treat kids like they're my age, like, because I know what's up with them. And here's the secret with kids and animals, you guys. If you're getting bugged by your animal or your kid, it means you haven't given them 100% of your attention for a few minutes. It's literally that simple. Kids and animals are done with me within 5 minutes. I had a horse that was all over me at this. I took Carol down to this horseback thing in San Luis Obispo, and I had an old friend. I mean, I have so many connections. It's just unbelievable when I start getting in my address book. Like, oh yeah, Hunter was down there, and Hunter's out in Texas now, but Courtney was a fan of mine in San Luis Obispo, and she's a horse regular. Oh, here's Courtney's, here's her contact, Craig. And then, oh yeah, I got horses. I live near a horse stable, and we rent horses out, and I'll take her for a ride out in the mountains. And I'm like, oh my God, those same mountains are where Lee's ashes are. I was like, does it get any better? What was the point of it? Oh, this horse, there was a wild one that Courtney was on, and then Courtney gave Carol her horse. And part of me is like excited, like, wow, the horse, what? Ooh, let's horse whisper this shit, And so one of my sort of mentor people was like, hey, make sure you hang out with those horses. They'll really tell you where you're at.
Wow.
So, I went in there like, and this horse was, where's the jacket? The horse was chewing on my jacket. My friend Courtney says, go up to the horse's nose, see how its nostrils are flaring? She goes, breathe in its exhale and then breathe into its nostril. So I got right up in the horse's face and I went, and the horse looked at me and I looked at it, and then it got up and it walked over to Courtney, and this is the wild one. And Courtney was all, well, that's weird, because it acknowledged me and then walked over to her. Like, hey, mom, who's this guy?
Or maybe,
Yeah, no, I get
maybe
that.
he got it and that was enough. I'm done.
Yeah, and then he came back and was like nuzzling my arm, and I'm
Okay.
like,
So he got you.
did pretty good. Then the other one was like getting jealous, so then it came over and I walked over to it, and it starts chewing on my arm right here, and it had some like plastic in its teeth, so now the plastic's on this nice jacket. But I was so enthralled with this thing, just this big beast, fascinated with me. It's all,
Mm. I need to go hang around some more.
and I'm like, wow, I must be doing pretty good. These beasts are all over me, but they're not beasts. See, that they're more evolved than we are in a lot of ways. I think these horses are. They got a whole world that we don't even have any idea where they're living. Oh fuck.
I'll tell you a story. When I was living up on a little bit of a mountain, and these people got horses, the trees, there wasn't any real place for horse. And my heart would go out to them. Never met them, just as I would drive
In a little
by.
pen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yuck.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, I would feel for them. Anyway, I was packing up to get moving, top of the mountain, above them. And sure enough, they come up to say goodbye.
Oh.
They got out of their little stalls.
Mm.
I got 2 apples and walked back to there.
Yeah, they know
But-
what's up, don't they?
Isn't that
Animals
lovely?
are amazing, yeah.
And then just to continue with the story, I had my little RV and stuff at the top of the mountain. Then the house that I was attached to was on a path that way. So you'd walk down the path. And so during this episode of moving, there was a big feather that was left on the path. And I went, oh, that's nice. Well, sure enough, the next day there was another feather in the path. So this, whatever it was, I'm not good with birds, had been with me the whole time. Do you know?
Mm.
I just, oh,
I hope that came out in the volume. I need to get a microphone at some point. I just never
I'm
made.
sorry. I didn't
No,
know,
we
didn't even know
want.
were
That's why
on.
we have the recording in the with you guys, is because of stuff like that.
Do we have
You're
speeches?
the mic's right there, so we should be good. But I'll find out when I listen to it later. Because if it didn't come out, then I'm buying a mic. That's my promise to you, everybody. Like, because I've been talking about it for a while now.
No,
and
I would have projected more. I wasn't even thinking.
so it worked out, but it was, so that's, if you didn't hear much of it, it's just a connection with animals and things of nature that they show themselves to us if we're willing to listen. It's just that like plants are living in a much slower world,
Mm,
and insects live in a little slower world, because they live and die faster than we do, right?
mhm,
Therefore, what one day is to them might be like 10 seconds to us.
mhm.
There was a Star Trek about that, where one world, in the original Star Trek, where one world was moving so much faster than the other. In the slow world, the fast people the slow people perceiving the fast people was like the sound of that's all they couldn't even see him.
Mhm.
So like Captain Kirk would be in the fast world and Sulu would be in the slow world, and he'd be trying to talk to Sulu. All Sulu would hear was, and then in the fast world, the slow people were like, they were like moving, like you couldn't even see it, but they were moving, and like if you came back 5 minutes later, their hand might be over here, kind of thing. Painful to watch, right? Just be like, there's a meditation actually where that's the goal. You might move your hands from here to here in a half hour. So you're only moving like,
Well, if you want to experience that, you just go to speak to a New Yorker or go to New York. Done.
right.
Mm.
So I'm trying to keep it back to the theme here, because there are people that watch these, it's like, so how do humans harvest the light? And, my own experience, it happened to me maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. Carlos Castaneda has a allusion to this, Allusion, Don Juan Matus. And, there's still debate whether Don Matus really existed. So we'll just say Don Juan Matus from the Carlos Castaneda books. He said there's a point in life where you have death as an advisor, and it might appear when you're driving on one of these old roads in Mexico as 2 headlights behind you. And it sounds kind of eerie, doesn't it? The nights, all black around you, and then 2 headlights appear. And if you're out in a road in the wilderness in Mexico and that happens, you might be in trouble.
Oh, wow.
What's a wild, wild west?
Oh,
You don't know
yeah.
what's coming. You know?
Right, yeah.
You don't know what's coming. I would turn my lights off and pull over if I saw that myself.
And get your little
Yeah.
protection out. huh?
Exactly. I wouldn't let somebody come up on me in Mexico like that. It's like Mad Max shit, you know.
Oh, wow.
Especially now with the borders open and the cartels are just having triple orgasms, you know. They're so
Oh, I
happy right
bet,
now.
yeah.
You know, they're probably Biden's probably getting a percentage or two out of
Oh,
it. You know,
of
they're
course.
getting something out of all that.
Mhm.
Anyways, so harvesting the light, then there's a point where I noticed that in my light harvesting, which was avoiding vitamin D, D3. I'll speak to that in a minute. And I was always had a little profound respect for vitamin A because you name a vitamin after it's called retinol. So they name it after the retina, you know, the retina and the retinol. And I'm like, well, why would they call it? Must have vitamin A must have a connection to the eye if they're calling it retinol, you know, like duh. And the other reason for any connection here is the liver meridian ends at the retina. Liver meridian starts on the inside of the toe and goes up. There's a famous point, liver 3 in the foot, and there's this point on the inside of the leg, and it goes up through the liver and on both sides into the internal organs, and then it ends behind the eye.
Is that the acupuncture point?
Yeah, there's an I mean, they won't needle it, of course, but so this is where what they call liver yin deficiency affects the vision, and you see spots in the field of vision. You guys ever seen trailers or spots?
Mhm.
Floaties.
Floaters, yeah.
Mhm.
That's what floaters are. That's liver yin deficiency. And I had a diabetic client who had to have laser surgery because he was seeing those spots and the retina had cracked.
Mhm.
And fluid deficiency, dry skin, gets cracked. So the retina cracked. And vitamin A would have helped that. But a chronically high blood sugar causes dehydration of the cells. See, because when there's too much sugar in the body, then the body has to dilute it somehow, right? But the cells get a little wrinkled because they get dehydrated in the process. It's kind of what's happening to humans right now. We're getting cooked alive in a microwave. We just don't know it, you know. Oh,
Yeah.
there's so many more things going on. Whatever they're saying, there's 1,000 other things behind that, you know, like they talk about Antarctica, look at the Arctic, you know. They talk about Florida, go look at Alaska, you know, just go to the opposite side of the world where they're pointing their fingers at, you know. There's so much things being covered up, you know. You know, the Trump Florida thing was a big distraction too.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
all kinds of shit going on. It's way more important than that, you know.
That's
You know, are you kidding me?
$1 billion lotto jackpot.
But we better stay away from that. Let's go. Well, I'm gonna
Yeah.
bring us back to the light and the harvesting of the light. I really wanted to get into this. So I was going to try to get this done today, but what I was helping to do is vitamin A, as Morley Robbins of the Root Cause Protocol puts it. A lot of what I've learned in the last 5 years is because of Morley and his work. I had to humble myself and learn from yet another person to get what I needed to move forward with some hidden mysteries in health that I couldn't solve myself. And one of these was like this free radical yang excess. There's the whole syndrome in Chinese medicine they talk about with this, where the fire consumes the yin. And a lot of us are in that now. And so yin deficiency is sort of, you know, major thing we're studying. The major way to heal yin deficiency is just to sleep and rest. I mean, that's the free way. So if you can't sleep and rest, then you better figure out why you can't, you know. And generally it's B vitamin and mineral deficiency is a good place to start. And the nervous system needs to be nourished. And if that doesn't work, then you got to look at something else. But nourishing the nervous system should start there. And that's food-based Bs. Don't take the B supplements unless you know what the fuck you're doing. And I mean the F word, because they're made from coal mining waste.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
You see USP on your vitamins. That means United States Pharmacopoeia.
Even the pure products?
Oh yeah. Like Thorne's proud of their synthetic bees. I call them. I talk to people, you know, because I want to know using food.
Coal waste.
They don't want me talking about this, so I can only say so much on YouTube, you know. But yeah, it's so you see USP. That same thing they're spraying in the sky is it's called coal fly ash, specifically coal fly ash, ASH.
Why?
Coal fly ash. It's when they mine coal out of the earth, there's byproducts, and you got to find something to do with your waste. Well, they're all in bed together, so I'll buy your waste. Ha ha ha! We'll tell the humans it's good for them. Like fluoride, that's aluminum mining waste. You know, it's ridiculous how it's all the sinister connections to each other. They're all scratching each other's backs.
What is pesticide waste?
Oh, I mean, who knows? I don't know at all. I'm just
I think
grabbing at straws. There's so many corruptions in our world. But I digress. So Morley, what I saw on one of Morley's PowerPoints for the root cause protocol was, he said vitamin A is a light sensor and vitamin D is a light filter. So he had sunglasses on one meme and he had this light sensor thing on another. And I was like, oh, how cute. That's an interesting looking at it. And so what Morley always did that I really respected is he went back into the research. He claims he spends 2 hours every morning drinking a cup of coffee and studying. Research goes back well down to 1900, maybe even before that. Because a lot of what we have now is recycled material from about 1890 to 1950. That was the renaissance of health and nutrition. And most of what we have now is plagiarism from those years. You know, when the Bible talked about the satanic people taking over the earth and, you know, being sort of going backwards for a while, that's what we've been installed for about 100 or more years. They knew about electric vehicles 100 years ago. They chose otherwise. They knew about ethanol, which is a clean burning fuel. It produces 0 emissions.
And
If you
brown
pour pure
fat.
ethanol in a bowl and light it on fire, there's just a clear blue flame and there's no smoke.
And there's water.
You pour gasoline in a bowl and light it on fire, it's only 35% combustible. The other 65% is up there now because of Rockefellers and all them, you know. But I'm not supposed to be talking about this stuff, you know. We're living in a third world country now, you know. The US is no longer a first world country. You need to come to realize that. When 27% of your own citizens are ready to use arms against you, you know that we're in that now. That's civil war. But no one will say it openly, except for people like me. But that's kind of where we're at. I posted a song. You didn't, like, you know, you see some of my Facebook posts, but this one, for some reason, got censored, and it was a song by the Hanuman, like, you know, the Hanuman in Hindu.
Yeah.
Well, this band had the audacity to name themselves the Hanuman, like plural Hanuman. I was like, the Hanuman. I was like, oh my God, how cute. I love these guys. So the song is one of those kirtan mantras thrown in with sound is the weapon of the revolution. Sound is the weapon of the revolution. And then it's just so cute. It goes on for 14 minutes. And it's just, oh, composition, everything, the transition, so well done. And so I posted on Facebook. I did a screenshot of the song, like, hey, and I mentioned like my experiences with sound in my life and what this, I didn't want to name them because it, you know, Carol's involved with the access consciousness people, so I didn't want to name them. But a couple other teachers are like, you know, their recommendation for getting energy work is it's okay to talk or have background noise, but not okay to have music.
Huh.
You know, like it's too calming and you can't get triggered. And I'm like, you got some projections going on here. You know, that's not been my experience. Like music has always been able to trigger me. Like I'll cry, you know, I get like, it feels like in some good music, it plucks this chord and then there's like tears instantly. Anybody have that? You know,
Oh,
you get
yeah.
that, you know, music just, it'll pluck something like a little chord in there. And it's like, I'd way rather have that than some people screaming in the other room. Are you kidding me? No, I was talking about that. Like, no, sound is important. And if it is the weapon of the revolution, then, because one of their chorus lines is chant down Babylon. Chant down Babylon, chant. I was like, oh, that's a good one. Chant down Babylon, baby. Chant away Babylon, you know. And Starhawk alluded to that in the Fifth Sacred Thing. Anybody read the Fifth Sacred Thing? Starhawk's book, The Fifth Sacred Thing. It was a bestseller. Like, wow, changed my life 30 years ago, that book. So at the end of World War III, basically, it's in the Bay Area, of course, so she's based in the Bay Area. All the evil forces of the tyranny of the United States comes, and the Bay Area is like a military, no military, no nothing. And all these armies are coming in and they're like, how are we going to win this war? And they just kept praying. They kept praying. And then it was the coolest fiction ever. I wish that life was this way, in fact, and maybe it will be. But the ancestors of all the natives that the white man had killed and all their ancestors of this emerging new culture that was the old culture. And then they tore up the streets in San Francisco and turned back, the watershed came back, basically. But the geoengineers dried everything out. And she wrote this book, like, I think in the 90s. So, you know, the geoengineering has been going on in force since the 70s. It was an Oakland A's World Series game when the A's were 72, 73, 74 world champions. I went and watched one of the recordings of those in some geoengineering research. That's what I saw in the sky in 1972 World Series. Chemtrails.
Hmm.
I was mortified,
Mm.
mortified. But they were using it, they were spraying silver iodide over the clouds in Vietnam to cause some of the storms and the rain. And they did some Hoover Dam thing in 1920. And in 1955, they did Project Cirrus off the East Coast. They tried spraying tons of dry ice into this hurricane. And of course, it caused a disaster. You know, oh, that experiment went bad. Killed a bunch of people in Georgia.
Oh, wow.
It stirred it right into Georgia and made it worse.
Wow.
Millions of tons of dry ice in the center of this hurricane. You know, what the fuck are you? 1950. It was in the newspapers.
Okay.
Project Cirrus, you know,
Mm.
CIRRUS,
Mm.
CIRRUS, if you want to research it.
Mm.
I saw it with my own two eyes, like, wow, there's so much stuff that's right in our face that, you know,
Hidden in plain sight.
yeah. So we're, you know, I didn't even, here's how, this is why people that stick with the talks always see all these tangents come full circle. So the dark part, you know, seeing the dark and harvesting the light. So the darker it got for me, the experiences of what I've seen with clients in my life, hundreds and hundreds of heartbreaks, 25 personal female like gut punches, like, but you know, I caused my own heartbreak. Let me just be clear, you know, the victim, hero, perpetrator triangle.
Mm.
Well, guess what I was addicted to?
Oh.
Hero, knight in shining armor, damsel in distress, I'll come save you. Oh, fuck.
You're still doing it.
And in Ireland, there's an old saying in the Celtic lore, be careful of the spells you weave, you might get lost in them.
Yeah, that's real.
25 times.
Yeah, well, I'm a Taurus, you know, slow to learn, slow to learn.
Stubborn.
No, the problem and the greatness of it is that the heart that's beyond the heart is impenetrable. And so this thing breaks. And then what saved me in the end was an Adyashanti, a guy that, Adyashanti is the reason why I'm still alive. A lot of reasons, him and his wife. But that's another long story. This guy had broken heart. His girlfriend had broken up with him, and you know, heartbroken. You know the metaphor. I'm just heartbroken. And Aja, in front of 300 people in Mount Madonna. You know the big meditation hall in Mount Madonna. In front of 300 people, he's up there, and this guy's kind of ready to cry. And Aja's just, he's like stone faced, like, so. And everyone's like, what the fuck is he gonna say? You know? And he goes, so your heart's broken. He's like, why don't you let it stay broken open, and don't fix it? And I had this moment where it was like revolutionary, like, oh, what a concept. I could just let my heart stay broken open. Wow. I can do that. That's not so hard. It's already there.
Yeah, there you go.
So the point is not to sew it up with a new identity.
Yeah.
Don't change to the next identity. See through the identity, because it's going to get ripped away when you die anyway. If you see through it now, then the Bardos aren't as bad when you die. It's like, take an exhale. Rumi poem. There's a Rumi poem about this. You exhale one breath here and inhale with a breath of joy in the next world. It could be like that. But you got to go in with that, where the spirits, where you have died and you're in the back seat. Most people are still in the front seat. I mean, I'm in the front seat still too much, because that part of me didn't get wiped out. Some people it does, but very few. The rest of us have to go through the awakening process of learning to play as what he calls a baby Buddha. I'm 17 years into that, because that was the realization, age 39. Like, now I know what enlightenment is. I don't have to have faith. I don't need belief. I know it came through me. This thing didn't go anywhere. You know, I had this image of this golden halo enshrouded version of myself that would emerge out. And it was so disappointing in some sense of like, okay, it's always and already here. So if it's always and already here, then how do I unenlighten myself away from it? That's the question. Because if the perfection that I want is always and already here, you know, another pointer in reverse of this is I got on stage with Abraham. And you know, my girlfriend was so mad because they've been to all the Abraham conventions. I'm the newbie, and I raised my hand. He was like 300 people in this fucking Marriott, you know, room. And this is the story of my life. I raised my hand and they point at me, and my girlfriend thinks it's her, and she starts to go, and she's like, nope, him. And I look at her, I'm like, that's right, baby. You try
Yeah,
4
yeah.
times to get up there.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, what am I going to ask? I didn't really have a question.
Right, right,
Oh
right.
my
No, they say participate. So participate means raising your hand. So
God, so funny.
I've been there.
Well, I had a long 20, 25 minutes up there. I mean, because the entity was into me. So one of the questions was basically, so how do you see humans? You know, from the entity that you call Abraham's perspective. And this is a 2-word answer. No, 3-word answer. In past tense.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool? Because if you live in the moment, by the time our perceptual apparatus perceives the moment we're in, the next microsecond has moved forward. So in a sense, we're always a little bit behind reality because of our perceptual delay, you could call it. We're filtering too. You know, there's a great book, Stephen Harry Buhner, the plant one. Well, there was the Lost Language of Plants. That was a good book from him, but there was the more recent one. Well, anyways, there's a little piece in there about these sensory gates we have, and they're around the thalamus, and so we gate how much we're letting ourselves perceive. Because if you perceived everything that was going on around you, you'd go nuts. You'd be overwhelmed. We're already overwhelmed. That's kind of what that autism thing is. You got to find a way to tighten up those gates. And so that's what those DMT experiences and cannabises and they unfilter our reality. And we're able to perceive other realms we wouldn't normally perceive. Meditation gets us there. Yoga gets us there. Breathing, sex can. Well, making love can. I don't know that sex gets you there, but you know, good lovemaking with awareness, which can be solo lovemaking, doesn't have to be with another. But these things open up, and then that's why people need to be prepared for the nothingness. Because there's a nothingness before, there's a blank nothingness before the radiant nothingness. And that's the dark night of the soul stuff that people generally, that's where a lot of us get stuck. I was stuck there a long time. I still get stuck there, but and there's this process of coming to understand that if it's always and already here, then what I am is in a process of falling asleep and waking up and falling asleep and waking up and throughout various periods throughout the day. And we're all in different places there. Some of us are more asleep than we are awake. If the definition of awake is aware, then think about how much you're asleep during the day and not aware of what's going on around you. You know, like pretty humbling. If your standard is 100%, you know, like mine was, I had a girlfriend a client that became a girlfriend because she challenged me. I was all, yeah, I'm pretty awake. And she just went, psh, a client. And I was like, ooh, tell me more. And she goes, you're barely half awake. Oh, I like this a lot, you know, like being challenged like that. Wow, who is this person? You know, like she's the client and humbling me, you know, I was really impressed. Because you ladies are aware of things that men aren't, and generally don't talk to the men about it. I know because I talk to women about it because I have a high sensitivity on my feminine side. I was a woman in life before this, and I know how I died, and you know, I know why I'm a man this time around, and there's a lot of strange stuff about that, but I'm really tuned into the feminine, and that's why women are pretty comfortable with me in general, is because kind of part of me is a woman looking out through these eyes, you know. It's rather weird, but you know, I just came back this time to what's it like to be a man, you know, because most of my incarnations were female. You know, like those witch hunts and all that. Oh God. And if you guys have any dreams, like I got beheaded ones, I got stabbed ones, tortured, burned alive, raped from every orifice. Boy, horrendous dreams, you know, like thrown off a cliff. Let's see what else. Too many to mention, but yeah, like thousands of memories. And in the years I was meditating, like I had to sit through some of this, like driving my car off a cliff. There's a good one.
Thelma and Louise.
Well, there's that cartoon moment, you know, like where you know you're gonna fall, you know, but it's like you look down thousands of feet and go, I'm so screwed.
Yeah.
I've had that played at least 10,000 times in my life. That particular moment played out in dreams or, you know, daydreams, meditations, tens of thousands of those. And that's just one of many strange phenomena in Craig's world. But that's part of, like, you know, I'd been trained enough to survive and even teach enough now, but I'm alive because angels kept me alive. I mean, I'm clear about that now. Like you know, I'm alive in spite of myself. You
Yeah.
know, really, I had a death wish for quite a long time on some level.
Yeah.
You can relate.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, and you're kept alive in spite of that, aren't
yeah,
you?
for sure.
Because you're not really making the decisions, are you? As you can see now.
Yeah,
Because if you had, you wouldn't be here.
true. Very
I
true.
didn't plan on living to be 50. When I was like 25, I was like, I don't want to be 50. I want to be
Mhm.
done by that point.
Yeah,
Mm.
ancient.
Yeah, you know, now I'm like, 100. Maybe I'll make it.
Mm.
You know, but it's not about the goal, it's about the journey, you know. And so if the moment's got, you know, I got an out card, you know. I know I could out myself pretty easy. You know? And in the Outlander, one of the Scottish brothers was so miserable, he came to the Claire, who is the healer, and said, you know, can you find a way to take me out? Because he was just miserable. His whole body he was in pain, and you know, like, you know, I've had 10 out of 10 pain. Have you guys? Like 10 out of 10, where I call it divine pain. It's so strong. Yeah. So he was going through that, and he's like, I just want out. Like, you know, I took his out card. Like, I can't go on like this any longer. I lost a lot of my hair. I had a full head of hair before I tore my rotator cuff 7-8 years ago, and was in 10 out of 10 pain for 3 weeks and didn't sleep for 3 weeks. And there was an acupuncturist that got me out of that cycle because I was going down.
Oh,
Yeah, it was bad.
understandable.
But I haven't taken a pharmaceutical in 30 years, and I won't. I said I'd rather be dead than go over to that dark side in any way, shape, or form.
Mhm.
Part of my path was to be pure as possible. And it's ironic because I just had a kappa mate. But you can appreciate the irony, right? I've always wanted freedom, and you know, if you're on anything, you know, I love this stuff. You're like, I've been like, I was looking forward to coffee for too long this summer. I was like getting away with it because I was doing zeolite, and zeolites, I'm calling it an adaptogenic clay now because it's so fascinating. Like, I was getting away with all kinds of like indulgences I normally wouldn't get away with because of the zeolite. And Standard Process has a product called GI Adsorb, and it's like only buy Standard Process if I can because they're so well sourced, and I've seen their leadership and I've seen their facility, and I know what they're about. So it's zeolite and chlorella and collinsonia root, which has an affinity to the pelvis, this herb. So I'm rather impressed with the formula, and so I started taking it, and I was just like, what the? So I got to do some research on zeolite. I've got it in my Google Drive. That's kind of like I have my own version of the Green Med Info Sayer G stuff. I do borrow from his work, and it's because what I want people to have is when they're a member, you get access to information, and there really is anybody that's been that high level to get access to the whole topic folder except for my team. But there's stuff like this in there where, you know, if you want to go into the Google Drive folder and go Control F, I'm going to look up autism, then you're going to get, you know, bunch of stuff that will help you with your topic of research. I think Sayer G, you know, I think his membership thing's worth getting because he's got a lot of cross-reference and really well done library. You know, I'm gonna need to start asking for commissions for all these plugs I give people. You know, I should. Like Chronometer, I plug them all the time. But these are like Chronometer has Standard Process supplements in their freaking database. Are you kidding me?
Or see if they have like a referral link that you can get paid for.
Yeah, at some point I'll send my team out. Like, you know, you'll be one of those guys because you got the voice for it. You know,
well, yeah.
You got the hey, pay up.
What's the name of the standard process item for the pelvis?
Oh, the GI one. So if you want just the pelvic product, it helps with hemorrhoids and tighten up the blood vessels around the pelvis. That's collinsonia root. COLLINSONIA. Wait, Sonia. SONIA. Collinsonia root. They give you a 2 capsules. You need to take it on an empty stomach, but it's a great product for. I had one version of hemorrhoids during my healing journey, and I ended up like it was bad. I mean, it was something that came out of my body through my rectum. I'll just put it that way.
When you say pelvis,
and collinsonia root helped that process.
You had injury to your pelvis recently?
Oh, well, there's a bunch of stuff for that, but that's kind of like generally the one product though that's very inexpensive is Ligaplex, LIGAPLEX1. There's Ligaplex 1 and 2, but anytime there's an acute injury, I tell people to take 3 Ligaplex 3 times a day with a meal, 9 a day, and do that until the injury starts to heal up. And that the product's really weird. Like I've had back injuries that were incurable, basically cured, knee injuries. I'll try and go off of it because you know don't want to be free, and I'll go off of it. And then I had a broken neck 36 years ago. I had a concussion right here 10 years ago. Should have died. I have a torn MCL on the left side from forcing my leg into full lotus, which is actually my Facebook avatar. I'm in a beautiful Pescadero driftwood cabin, and my brother was like, Craig, took you 17 years to get to full lotus. Let's get a picture of it. But we had just surfed, and my legs were icy cold and stiff. So I forced myself into full lotus, and I felt it pop.
Oh, wow.
Didn't hurt. I was numb because of the cold water, and I knew it was the last time. My spirit guides came in and said, "Cocky white man, this is the last time you'll ever be in full lotus." It was like a discerning, like, couple voices talking is how I get it sometimes. I'm like, fuck.
So you got this ACL surgery?
MCL, and no, I never had surgery.
Wow.
I don't believe in surgery because I believe in comfrey
Comfort.
and the bone protomorphogen, which is in the ligaplex product.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, there's what's called the morphogenic field, and that's sort of the blueprint that the body grows into. Like I have a field to make Craig cells this way, and you have a blueprint that says make Lisa cells this way. That's your morphogenic field, and the Celestine Prophecy wrote about it actually. And the word morphogens is referred to loosely in a couple of books on Chinese medicine. So it's the force of growth in the body. It's anabolic. It's a growth promoter. And what Royal Lee found out in the 40s and the 50s, he wrote a book about protomorphology. This does relate to the light, by the way. He wrote a book called Protomorphology. Yeah, just knock on that cider door there, and then go to that restroom on the right. Protomorphology. And so Royal Lee called this growth factor a protomorphogen, and it's prior to DNA. It's not energetic, but it's not physical yet. Ormus, if you've ever heard or read about Ormus, ORMUS, this is related to that phenomena of like this growth factors. And then what he called back in the day an NTA was the opposing force, and that's the natural tissue antibody. And that's the tearing down force, like the osteoblast and the osteoclast in the bones. There's cells that build bone cells, and there's cells that tear down bone cells. Osteoblast, osteoclast. And so it's the same thing in the nervous system. All there's cells like this all over the body. It's yin and yang. One type builds, one type tears down. Until it's anabolic and catabolic in medicine. So you want to have a balance, obviously, right? So comfrey is a highly anabolic plant. It increases tissue growth. I healed my leaky gut eating comfrey every day for 4 years, despite what the FDA says. The FDA is a medical mafia agency, and they're trying to tell you not to heal. So what you see plants on there that they tell you not to have are probably what you should have. You do the opposite of what they say, pretty much. It's like NASA, and they come out. When did they just come out? One of the government agencies just came out and said it was another one of these conspiracy theory ones. You know, they announce that it isn't going on. And they go out of their way to announce what isn't going on. And I'm like, it's kind of twisted.
Upside down.
You're announcing what we think is going on, but you're telling us it's not going on. That is really twisted. NASA does it all the time. No, the planet blah 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 doesn't exist. You know, why are you telling us? Why do we care? You know, it's like your little tiny minority of scientific ego. So I'm gonna do this back to vitamin A because the light seems to be working actually. Harvesting the light. So my metaphor last week was sort of like life is a process, and so what are plants growing towards? The sunlight, right? They're drawn towards the light. And then what about underground though? How do the roots know where to go?
Gravity? No.
Well, it's a query, you know. I don't know. What do you think? How do the roots know where to go?
Root for minerals.
Okay, sure, they're drawn to the minerals.
Water.
You guys ever seen what roots look like under the earth?
All over.
Well, there's a name for the pattern in which they grow. I'm fishing for information.
Like
Here. There you go. It's called a dendritic pattern. DENDRITIC, a dendritic pattern. Axons and dendrites. They're all over nature. The lung tissue does it, you know, to the alveoli. The rivers do it, from the tributaries to the big river. The blood vessels do it, from the small blood vessels to the big ones. The nerves do it. Shall I go on? The plant leaves do it, from the outside of the leaf to the stem. It's a process of life of the one becoming the many. Right?
The one
You see,
becoming
the one becoming the many.
Oh, sorry.
In the Taoist canon, it would be the unnameable becomes the named Tao, and then it splits into yin and yang, and then the yin and yang becomes the nameable things, and then it splits into the 10,000 things, you know. They have their own top-down model in Taoism.
Also the many becoming the one.
Well, the many becoming the ones is the dying process, right? The cells slough off in the lungs, the gut cells slough off and become the poop. This body sloughs off like a shell at some point. I mean, any of you been dead?
Yeah.
Anybody outside your body before?
Me too.
You've been outside your body too? Anybody else?
Yeah. I had to choose to come back.
So you understand? It's pretty peaceful, isn't it?
Oh, it's,
I didn't want to come back.
I didn't know.
Peaceful,
Yeah.
right? Really peaceful. Well, Raymond Moody wrote a book about this called Life After Life. I read it about 30 years ago. He was a parapsychologist. Raymond Moody, Moody. And the book was Life After Life. And it was basically a survey of, I think it was close to 1,000 people who had been certifiably pronounced dead.
Yeah.
And so he found some commonalities of people, and I was one of them, that everyone had some sort of reckoning moment. I think was one commonality, but they found out that the reckoner they were the reckoner and the reckonee. There wasn't a God reckoner, it was their own reckoner, like a wiser part of themselves, so to speak. And it wasn't even necessarily physical. And then another commonality was there were a lot of variations of heading down the tunnel towards the light. He said there was a lot of that, and a lot of personal testimonials in the book. And there's an hour video. I think it might still be on YouTube. If you just go Life After Life, Raymond Moody on YouTube, I think you might still get it. It's really worth seeing. A lot of filmed interviews of people. And another one is for people that are like, there was a medical story about a neurosurgeon who died of an encephalitis on the operating table. And he was dead, flatlined. And then while he was dead, though, he had popped out of his body, and he knew what everyone was saying and doing. And then when he came back later, and he said he wasn't woo-woo, but he said literally this angel appeared with a butterfly into the scene when he was, quote, dead. And I love stories like this, and I read the whole book. So he was off in this other world, like a magical world with the fairies, and he's like, and he's like, in the dream world, he's like, wow, life isn't what I thought it was. People, the strict scientist, and then suddenly he's in the world of the woo-woo, and he sees, oh boy, this life isn't what I thought it was at all. And that's what most people got heading for them, whether it's in this world or the next. You're like, whoa, this is not, because that's what happened to me about 1,000 times over, because I was stubborn. This is the way it is, Craig. No, I go back over here. This is the way it is, Craig. No. The big one for me was responsibility. I didn't want the responsibility of being awake. So on some unconscious level, I kept myself asleep as long as I could until I felt safe enough to stand out a little more. Because now the world's full of people like you guys, but we were all isolated. You're not any different than me. Like, I remember age 5 in my mom's Capri wagon having these entities talking. I used to call it the immensity. And I felt like this little portal, and there's all these beings back here talking, and these two were prominent. And one goes, he doesn't understand. And another one's like, no, he's going to get it. And then one of them said, yeah, but how's he going to survive with all these idiots around him? And I'm down here going, thanks, not helpful. Like I burst into tears, and then my mom's like, why are you crying again? And I'm like, you got no idea. There's no way you're going to understand my world. So we all do our ways. Nelson Mandela says we're not afraid of our darkness, we're more afraid of our light. That's one of Nelson Mandela's famous statements. We're afraid of standing out because of what I'll call the crucifixion complex. Who am I to stand out? Because I'm just going to get crucified anyways by the Matrix.
But you do, if you speak out.
Well, you're seeing it happening all around you right now, right? All around us, just mini versions of it.
Safe.
Yeah, and here's the thing about karma, which is cause and effect. I've read 5 instances now of people that were wishing the vaccinated dead, like prominent medical people that are now dead.
Wait, that were vaccinated.
They were vaccinated, saying they wish the unvaccinated were dead, and now they're dead.
Really?
I mean, remember, because of what you manifest, things are manifesting very quickly. I wish you did. If it's all one, bounces right back. That's right. That's right. It's a way of saying, I'm afraid of you. I don't want you around. That's really what they're saying. If you really have compassion for their side, it's fear. I don't want to be in the unknown. these doctors will save me. The priest of science will save my soul. And what they're really saying is I'm afraid, and you represent the unknown, and I'd rather have you dead than deal with you. Than deal with the truth.
There's a woman in Kauai, a famous comedian actress.
Ooh,
And there was
How
a
much? Yeah.
quote. She
Third.
said,
That's
any child that's not vaccinated, they should be killed.
Oh my
She,
God.
Who said that?
I read this.
That doesn't
Bette
surprise me.
Midler, who actually has a lot of
Oh,
land
poor
in
Bette.
Kauai,
Poor Bet.
and she
That
has a
doesn't
horse
surprise me.
stable. I mean, she.
I don't think Bet was really bad at that point, though. I heard she was one of those like demonic child molesters myself.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, the Hollywood. We were talking about it earlier. Before, were you here when we were talking about the Hollywood
Yeah,
stuff?
I was.
Yeah, so you know she's suspect.
I didn't know.
They're all
She
suspect.
and Barry Manilow were always friends.
I loved Kevin Spacey, and I was like, I found out about him, and I'm like, fuck, man, I like that guy.
Mm.
Like American Beauty was like, fuck, I thought it was a
Yeah,
masterpiece,
and
you
then,
know?
The Usual Suspects. He's a hell of an actor. I'll give him
Yeah,
that.
brilliant actor, but
Mhm.
their actor's a key word,
There you
right?
go.
But it's like almost everyone was on that list for Epstein Island.
Oh,
Remember
yeah.
what happened to my brother?
Mm.
You get that point where you're blackmailed, and if you say yes, they got the goods on you for the rest of
Exactly.
your life.
Oh yeah, exactly.
They got the goods on you the
They'll
rest.
destroy you.
So that's what happened with that fellow that supposedly died in prison and had the island.
Oh, Epstein.
Epstein.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
did this on purpose with Clinton and.
Oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
Everybody.
everybody.
Everybody
If
was
you're
on there.
lucky enough to be in a group like this.
Mm.
Well, we're, according to a lot of my sources, it seems to be adding up is that the topmost layers are done, and now they're sort of trickling down. Like we have to go from the bottom up while the top's coming down. But
The robotics.
the new Joanne Woolfield sent me the new Fall Cabal. There's a part 2 with like 20 parts to it, and man, I really want to believe it. She's got some good data, but it's back to that Q thing again, and it's like
It's good stuff.
it's really good news if you believe it.
In the last week.
Well, she makes some excellent evidence and some points. So one of the points is that JFK Jr. didn't die, and then he went underground. And JFK Jr. had a proclamation when he was like 5 years old that I'm going to take down these people who killed my father. It was a lifelong dream of JFK Jr.'s, and so it would make sense to me to go into hiding at some point.
So the plane accident.
And him and Trump were sort of best friends. Isn't that interesting?
Kennedy's son.
JFK Jr., John,
Trump.
and Trump, and
Wow,
Donald
I
Trump
had no idea.
were good friends. Check out from 95 to 99. Check out their friendship. Go to the media and check it out. A lot of photos together. They were friends.
Ooh, Trump and JFK Jr.
Yeah.
Uh-huh, yeah. Well, they
So-
said he was about to reopen the investigation.
Anybody that Hillary Clinton hates is someone I like.
Oh,
And she hated JFK Jr.
Yeah.
Hitlery, yeah. Mm.
Hitler.
No, it's a radio talk show host back in Atlanta. That's what we used to call it.
So I want to get back to the light here, because here you see the artificial lights down on me now. It says LEDs, but it works for now. We're under the LED sun right now. And so if we're harvesting light, then like your vitamin D stores give up, like say you live in Alaska. I got a client in Alaska. You better store up some sunlight in the summer, right? Because there's a whole month where you ain't getting any at all.
Mm.
At some
more
point.
than a month.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, I mean, at some point where it's bad enough, like
No,
if you're down in Washington, it's not that bad, or maybe in Canada, but you're up, near Juneau, he said there's a whole month where it's basically at noon, there's like this twilight for like an hour.
it's fascinating.
It's like, oh, an hour of twilight.
Wow.
But then on the other side, there's only an hour of twilight and then 11 and a half hours of light.
Oh yeah, that's weird.
Now that's
too.
weird.
That is
23 and a half hours of light.
Yep. I
And
go
then
to
you
bed
have a
at
half
2 in the
hour of
morning.
light, from those two extremes. So what I did in his case, because he was seasonally affected disorder, he's a man in his 30s. I said, okay, we're going to give you St. John's wort, first of all, because that's a plant of light.
Hmm.
It's got yellow flowers, the color of the sun. And when you process it in alcohol or any old way, actually, except for water, an acid or an alcohol or in fat, the active ingredient turns red, like blood, like oxidized blood.
in alcohol.
And that's hypericin, is the active ingredient, because the Latin name for St. John's wort is Hypericum perforatum, meaning the perforate. If you look closely with a magnifying glass at the leaves of St. John's wort, it has little perforations in it, thousands of them. Hypericum perforatum. And the hypericin is the active ingredient that science says. But St. John's wort is a process, right? It's not a bag of chemicals. That's why I do tinctures, because you capture the spirit of the plant in the alcohol. That's why alcohol used to be called spirits, folks. So if you dry it, you can't dry St. John's wort. If you're buying St. John's wort capsule dried, it's garbage. Don't use it. It's oxidized within a few days, the hypericin out of it. You don't want to have it dried. You want it in liquid form, or a sort of a freeze-dried liquid extract, or a liquid extract made into a powder. That would work too. I think it's still debatable. I've seen the best results with the Medi herb has a great standardized one with a little extra hypericin added to keep it at a standard level. And then Gaia probably has, Gaia's good quality. So I do it myself. I have a couple of plants that I dug up from the mountains. I grow them in pots, and it really they shouldn't be growing, but I'm a plant whisperer, so they seem to. I'm sort of the light. Like if I live near my plants, they always grow bigger because they're going towards sort of the light that's coming through me. And that's another part of the story that didn't get to finish. So there are a couple of threads I need to tie together. So the last one, the one that was the big one that started with was, you see enough of the light, you see enough of the dark, then seeing enough on that dark side is, where can I find the love in this, and sort of what's right about this? Because if it happened, it's divine, because the very moment we're in is divine. Therefore, if the past moment that I'm not in alignment with, then every teacher I had has a saying about this: the further you are resisting reality, the more you're going to suffer. If it happened, you got to find a way to figure out how I'm going to get behind this, because it was divine. Why? Because it happened. And people ask why. I was always asking why. The divine doesn't answer why questions, by the way. I tried for 30 years. Don't get answered. The divine will answer what or who or even how questions and queries. That's the art of life. All the advanced meditators know that. You use query, inquiry. That's what Byron Katie does, the work, Byron Katie's stuff. Who would I be without that thought? How would I feel without that thought?
What about pendulum?
Well, that's still externalized, right? My whole life was learning to get it from the internal out. And these devices and all these externalities are still a way of projecting our power outwards instead of owning it from within. We are our own best self muscle test. So to me, the best muscle test is putting something up to our heart. And if there's a lean towards with the heart, it's a yes. And if the heart's drawn away from it, it's a no. I had a client that used to do that. He was $1 million client. This man didn't have a memory for 30 plus years. He was only living in the moment. He had parasites in his brain. It was part of his problem. And he had a team of like 3 or 4 people. And then Joanna Chow at 5 Branches said, "You're ready for Craig Lane now." That's what he told me. I don't even know Joanna that well, but I've taught there before as a guest lecturer. It's like, well, I'm flattered. So I said, why? And she said, well, he's going to want you to do things you're probably not ready to do yet. And so, because I have high standards, right? I'm not going to do dumb down bullshit, So he imagine only having the moment. He couldn't remember anything other than the moment. His wife had to remind him. Isn't that interesting? You're only in the moment.
That's good.
It's good with
Because
the
you're
concussion.
He was pretty happy.
Yeah.
He's a pretty happy guy.
No, that's and in a sense, that's a great thing. 'cause
It
it's
is.
Well, imagine being a millionaire
Wow.
and your wife's
Now.
managing your life while you get to, like, Google would hire him, and freaking all the major cottage industry, all the industries over in the valley would hire this guy because he would get insights like Edgar Casey and then forget him.
No royalties.
Wow.
So they'd pay him, but his wife was very sharp,
Yeah,
so she collected the dough while he,
of course.
This is a true story.
oh, this is one of 10,000 of my life.
This is amazing.
No, my life is literally like a circus show of weirdness. Like, that's why I became who I am, because I survived it enough to be able to talk about it. Like, I mean, I should have went nuts so long ago. woo, stuff like that. So this guy, yeah, he started having, we went deep, this guy and I, and so he started having memories. And then about 2 or 3 years in, he's like, Craig, I had a flashback 30 years ago. Like, oh, that's so good.
Wow.
And because I'm a neurological case myself, like traumatic brain injury, you know, like I got the herbs for it. I got the whole setup. Because the body starts to move an autoimmune thing. The body starts attacking the brain if there's enough damage. Muhammad Ali is a good example. He turned into a very low IQ man at his old
Yeah,
age.
vegetable.
He just got, you know, you get
Oh,
socked
yeah.
enough.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
from
not good.
neurological?
Oh, so cool.
Oh, these guys, I mean,
Oh, from
the boxing back in the 50s and the 60s, as you know, it's not the boxing of now. You know, those gloves were not nearly as.
no forgiveness.
I mean, just
Mm.
brutal. Cro-Magnon. Just, yeah, just, yeah, it's a different time. for sure.
Oh, Jack Tatum for the Raiders. You know, the Raiders,
Oh,
the
yeah.
assassin. You know,
I
you hear a
mean,
guy,
just
a
no
football player called the
mercy at
assassin.
all.
You know,
Paralyzed the guy, no mercy at all. Just-
what the f? Yeah, bad stuff.
yeah.
Wow.
So we've gone past the worst, and to sort of finish that, the part I just want to use to say, if I tried to take on every person's problems that came to see me, I would be a basket case.
Mhm.
So the point is to see through the one who would take it all on in the first place. Who is this I that would take all this on? And that's been an inquiry of mine for over 30 years. You know, like,
Cool.
but it's also a spiritual bypass tool, very effective there too. How do I bypass feeling stuff? You know, start with grandiose statements of generality, like, who would I be without that thought? It's a great way to, if you're sincere and you're actually feeling the inquiry, because you're not, if you're getting a response of an inquiry up here, no. Life gives us the response as we're speaking it, if we're paying attention.
Mm.
And I used to get hundreds of thousands of times just dead silence. Who am I? Dead silence, crickets. Who am I? But that was the response. You're the nothing. You're not alone. It's all one. Alone, all one. No thing.
Wow.
So there was a moment at Mount Madonna. I was sitting in the chair, and it was a DMT moment. If you've ever taken acid, it was a moment where you're not you, you know. And I was like, it was like I was meditating, and suddenly, whew, I wasn't me anymore. And I'm like, and I had this funny thought, like, wow, there's nobody home, and yet there's something here thinking. That's the moment I want for everybody to have. Like, we realize there's this moment of like, wow, I'm living a paradox, literally. How can I be here, but yet not be here at the same time?
Isn't that bird?
Yeah, there's some strange. So
Interesting word.
the point is that if I, back to my world, is if I took on everything that I'd seen, so I'm trying to find the love back. That was the point earlier, was I'm trying to find the love in whatever happened. Like, you know, if it's all divine, then what was divine about my two best friends dying in 2001 that were great people on the earth, Jill and Lee? Like, my Facebook avatar is still him with my background photo of me hugging a big old sequoia up in Trinity, because he spoke for the plants, and those people are rare on the planet these days because a lot of people just sold themselves out and some are just unaware. But I'm here to speak for the plants. I mean, be clear about that. You know, I kill snails and slugs. I kill insects that kill the plants. I've had girlfriends come up against me on it, and it's like, hey, they're killing my plants. How would you feel if something was attacking your baby? They're my babies.
Put your snails in a big agapanthus.
Well, if I had ducks and birds around me, I would just, you know, throw them over to the birds. You know, it's a good use of them.
You could eat
Yep.
snails if you were really, really hungry.
Yeah, and that's another great idea, actually. And you know, they're promoting bugs now, so we have a big bug farm.
If they grow no matter.
Cockroaches.
Yeah, you know what I saw in a meme? Superfood, cockroach milk. I saw it with my own two eyes.
Yeah,
Cockroach milk
Oh,
being promoted as a superfood. Now, what the question is like pureeing cockroaches and straining out the milk, or are they milking cockroaches?
I think that's pretty popular. I think that's pretty common in Asia. And
Is it really milk from a cockroach female though? You know, like
cockroaches aren't really stupid though.
it's like what?
I was in Hawaii and I was in a back bedroom and all these cockroaches were harvesting themselves around the grease that someone left around the stove. And there was a little slot underneath the door of the room I was in, and I was having a little party, a dinner party. And I've got music on, and 3 cockroaches came under the door, the big 2-inch B-52 bombers, and they were just running, they were flying around to the music. They came back to enjoy the music with the people.
Oh,
I swear to God. And I caught them, and I put glass bowls over them. I put them on the fridge, and then I put something under them and carried them out and got them out.
okay.
Ooh.
I'm gonna try and paraphrase that. So Carol was just talking about some cockroaches, showing intelligence, and you're coming out from under they were having the party, and then they were flying around with the party with the music, and so if you take it back to all that, if you realize, like, I've cleared spirits from homes, and the statement I use to clear spirits from homes is step into the light.
Yep.
And that's what, for me, the full circle of is I can only be able to handle this darkness, because if it's coming in through my awareness, then it's my dharma to let it move through me and just be a hollow reed is the goal, ideally, and let it come in and get processed and move through. And ideally, the ego stays out of the way as much as possible, and that even that's metaphorical. It's hard to speak to that, but I've actually seen a shaman suck out something out of somebody, turn the same color of what he sucked out the other person was, and get sick for a while, and then come back the next day fine. And so that's why a lot of the old gurus, I read thousands and thousands of guru stories. I was fascinated with gurus and enlightenment, and the gurus would always be, the really high level ones would always be very discerning about who they took on as a disciple. Why do you think?
They suck them.
They take on their dharma.
So much.
Yeah.
They take on their karma.
They could only handle so much.
Yeah. And Tina Malia, the singer, Tina Malia, the female vocalist. Oh my God, Tina is great. Tina Malia, she's a Facebook friend. She's big. She did a post about the male abuse of power. So well written. I showed it on Facebook, and she made some great points. And it's hard to generalize all males in positions of power, because she makes these blanket statements. And I've been sit with a lot of men in power, and there's some golden men out there, a lot, more than she realizes. And that was my point. It was like, hey, so I've shared it on my timeline. Said, hey, here's my experience of men in power, and yeah, it's there. I fell myself. I had a big apprentice team 10, 11, 12 years ago, and there was so much energy around me. I collapsed from my own power, from my own arrogance, and outwardly you didn't see much else, but Nicole Young and Kelly, they've known me a long time. It's like, I just bottomed out. I lost all my apprentices. The state took $1,700 of my money just right out of my bank account electronically. And there were so many signs of like big reset happening. But that part of this light thing is that in my life, I've always known that, like, especially 7 years ago when I was on this mountain road on my bike out too late and riding home, and I didn't have a light and it was dark. And then I was like, I was riding, it was like twilight, like right now. And I kept feeling this light was behind me. And I was like, kept turning around. Is there a car? Yeah. And I realized it was coming from the back of my brain. It was inside me. I kept turning around, and finally I went, holy fuck, this is what they talk about. The inner light would turned on. And it happens more regularly now, and it can be very disconcerting at sometimes. One of my favorite stories of enlightenment, this woman, Suzanne, can't remember her last name. She said when she woke up, her normal sense of herself shifted back and over 90 degrees by 3 or 4 feet. So she wasn't looking out through her eyes anymore after her enlightenment experience. She was over and back 2 feet, looking out from the side through this vesicle called her body. Imagine that. What a change. So I call that the perception point, the point from which we perceive. Castaneda calls it the assemblage point, like to assemble. The assemblage point is what Castaneda's teacher, Don Juan Mattis, called it. The point which we assemble reality, and that's that gate thing. And that light to me is, folks, it doesn't turn on, it's already there. It's how many layers have I blocked it with in the cave of the rocks to hide in my dark cave. The best metaphor is a Shakespeare metaphor. They go down under the earth, and those people have only known the fire their whole life. They're chained to the walls. That's all they've known their whole life. And one of them finally escapes and runs up to the real world and sees the sun as it comes back down. You got to come up with me. There's a whole other world up there. And the people kill him. you're nuts, and they kill him.
Wow.
That's the world we live in now.
Yep. Yep.
Jesus said, what? The kingdom of heaven is upon the earth, but men do not see it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's funny, it's translated to men. They didn't say anything about women.
Well,
But women do see it.
and mankind.
Or whatever. What's the new gender thing? They, it, who? I mean, question mark?
They or something, yeah.
They? Is that the
I think
non-binary thing?
Yeah,
they?
that's what it is, or her.
Can't remember it, how important is it?
Yeah.
Well, there's that whole Hispanic one. What is it? Latinx? That's the funny one. This woman all
I
over
don't
me
even
about
keep
it.
up with it, so
I just woman all over me about it, but we better not digress. I was trying to finish. So the light is always offset by the dark, and the dark is always offset by the light. So if you can have any kind of, like, I have to have hope every day. I got to find it. I got to laugh. If I had a partner, I'd have to have sex every day, but that's another matter. So it's important, I think, that we find as much as possible in our day. So in my day, ideally I would do yoga in the morning, the middle of the day, and at the end of the day. That's sort of the Essene way, because you keep checking in with your God.
Mhm.
And my teacher Adyashanti had a great metaphor about refuge, refuge. Where do you find refuge
Mhm.
in your day-to-day life? Because if I didn't have refuge
Yeah.
in my day-to-day life right now, I'd be done long ago. But because of my awakening experiences, it's like what I discovered was the awakening I sought was actually looking for me. It was actually opposite. The yearning I had wasn't even my yearning. It was what I had left at age 4 when mom told me to stop talking to my invisible friends.
Mm.
And I sold myself out and stopped doing it. And my invisible friends kept calling to me, but I thought it was me. And so when I woke up at age 39 at Mount Madonna, what I realized is my invisible friends had never left me. I had left them. And so the whole siren's call metaphor, that was the siren. That was my siren's call to bring me back to spirit, which I had never left me, but I had left it. Prodigal son metaphor. We all got it. I'm just telling you my story. You got yours. I'm just able to put words to it. And that's why I liked Adyashanti, because he was like the hot, fresh guy in the late 90s and the early 2000s. He could speak about things that people couldn't, because there's not a lot of post-awakening. Back 20 years ago, there wasn't a lot of post-awakening how-tos, because very few had actually gotten there and lived to tell the story and write about it. But he had, and I was in the process of learning myself. So vitamin A was a big part of my process in harvesting the light. So I realized, like, if you wear sunglasses, then you're upsetting your pineal light storage during the day. And is it really about vitamin D we're storing for the winter? No, I don't believe that's the case. I believe that we've got some apparatus like a gyroscope inside of us, and that if the inner light turns on, why are there yogis that spend their entire life living in a cave, for example? Because they're living in their own light.
Mm.
I mean, in autobiography of a yogi, there's a lot of stories. There's one, the frog saint. You remember the autobiography of yogi?
Yeah, but I don't remember that.
There's a frog saint one where, this guy lives since his entire life in the dark, pretty much. I've had 2 dreams with frog entities myself, and very benevolent spirit, by the way. Very cool. So here's the how-to part that if you stuck with the video this long, man, you're a god. It's like over an hour. So carotene has to be converted to vitamin A. So that means your liver has to work well. And you can tell that by how orange yellow your hands are, and your sclera is another marker. So I have a new client, and he's got a bunch of yellow in his sclera. And I'm like, right away, your liver's sluggish because your carotenoids are not being converted to A, and they're backing up in your eyes. And this is a mild form of jaundice. That's what it is. It's a mild form of jaundice. So people that drink the carrot juice, I've done it. You have tons of carrot juice for a while and your hands turn orange. That's that phenomenon. Your liver, there's not a pathology there. You just give your liver too much work, and the poor thing can't keep up with all the pigments you're throwing at it. So carotene is water soluble, but vitamin A is fat soluble. So there's the quandary. You can't call carotene vitamin A. At best, you can call it pre-vitamin A or pro-vitamin A. And a really truthful supplement company will state that. But some aren't. And they're just saying, oh, we got 5,000 IUs of vitamin A, and it's all carotene. So when carotene is converted to vitamin A in whatever units you're saying, you lose, for every 10 units of carotene only makes 1 unit of fat soluble vitamin A. So we'll start there. So you lose 10 count right away by the conversion. So but you have to be able to make fat or eat fat to make carotene into vitamin A, correct? So your liver is, partly responsible for that. So if your liver isn't working well, and your lymphatic system isn't, because your lymphatic system is where you absorb fat. But people don't realize that. Everything else goes up into the liver via the portal circulation, but fat goes into these things called lacteals and ends up in these lymph ducts and dumps out kind of up here by the neck above the heart. And that's why people die of heart attacks after meals, because there's too much fat in the blood and it gets sluggish.
Lymphatic system is where you absorb the fat?
Yeah, through lymph vessels. They're called lacteals, Lacteals, lacteals. You could go to Google Images, actually. There's some good stuff on Google Images, and type in like cross-section of intestines. You'll see some diagrams and stuff of all this. It's really interesting if you're into anatomy. I mean, these bodies are engineered miraculously. You know that. The heart beats 60 beats a minute. So you figure how many beats a lifetime. That's a lot of beats. Dang. So in the sclera, that's where I can see what's going on with the heart. The sclera and the iris are two of my favorite assessment tools because it allows me to bypass lab tests. I can look in your eyes and tell you what's going to be on your lab test. And that's not a bold claim because that's reality. That's what I do. And so you can see tendencies like I've got some disturbing patterns in my vascular system. One lateral part of the eye is this side is more the heart and the vascular system, but there's a little bit of lung. And this side's more lung and respiratory system and a little bit of heart. And there's these ugly lines, they're dark red. And so that means when they're jagged and dark, it means there's some tissue damage that has occurred that wasn't fixed, or a running inflammatory pattern that is an adaptation to the toughness of the world. And I have high blood cholesterol, but there's also high radiation in our environment. So the body's way of adapting in a high radioactive environment is to increase the cholesterol. Because it's a waxy substance that soaks up stuff.
What's high?
Pardon?
What's a high cholesterol?
Anything above, in my world, you start getting above 250 into 300.
Okay.
But even 300 is okay if your other ratios look okay. I'm okay with 300.
Okay.
People with high cholesterol, if you look and actually do the research, they live longer and have a higher quality of life than those with low cholesterol. But we're talking like above 300 even. And people with low cholesterol have a tendency to have more violent crime, more mental disorders, more depression, and live shorter than people with higher cholesterol. Doesn't that sound kind of like the eugenics policy being implemented? Cholesterol lowering drugs for kids, even, they're saying? And you can't develop your brain without cholesterol rich foods. That's why I don't think kids should be vegan, because you need to build that brain up.
Right.
Cholesterol.
Yep.
Best brain food I got is butter and egg yolks. Hands down. Hands down. Because egg yolks are rich in vitamin A that's preformed, especially from those chickens that are outside, pecking around in the live insects. And I mean, these chickens got it made out there, Any worm that pops its head up over there, there's 5 vultures that are ready to eat some live meat, The best metaphor I saw, I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to stick to the light to end this today. 8 minutes by 9, I swear. So how do you get that conversion to happen is if you have generally like greasy stools, you got to wipe your butt a lot, or the stool floats, that means you may not be digesting fat well. And so that means you might need to get some work on this. And one easy way is raw beets and raw radishes. That's why Dean knows I'm a broken record with raw beets and raw radishes, because there is no substitutes for these two foods. The radishes works with the lymph system and the beets work with the biliary system. There's a quote in Nourishing Traditions. If you've never seen the Nourishing Traditions cookbook by Sally Fallon, the little side margins have little stories, maybe related or unrelated to the recipes or the topic. But I read every one of those stories because they were so fascinating. And one of them was about this French nutritionist talking about how raw beet juice and raw beets corrects damaged cell function. Now, I read that and I think, bold claim. But raw beet juice has a lot of oxalates in it, and oxalates carries out bad stuff. At its best, it's a good chelator. Like the ESSIAC formula has sheep sorrel in with it, root and leaf, the whole plant ideally. That's why, Rene Cassier, that's what ESSIAC is Rene Cassier's name in reverse. and Renee was a famous cancer therapist in Canada, and they tried to do her formula in reverse so the American Medical Association wouldn't kill her because they'd already burned her clinic to the ground and all of her records. It's the case with every cancer therapist. I was just writing a whole piece about Harry Hoxsey, who Harry Hoxsey, bless you.
Forbidden Cancer Cures documentary on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, Harry was
Oh,
fourth
really?
generation, it turns
Forbidden?
out.
Mhm.
Harry's father's father's father
Good doctor.
had cured his mother's cancer in like 1840.
Mm.
And so they handed it down through the generations. And then this fourth generation kid, Harry, he was pissed.
Mhm.
So he went right in their faces doing ads and stuff on television. And you know what they did with him?
Of course.
They took him out.
Yeah.
Raw beets correct damaged cell function, and raw radish.
That's a claim in nourishing traditions. I didn't say it.
No, it's okay.
I'm
but
just a messenger.
raw-
I don't want to get in trouble.
raw
And
radish-
then raw radishes thins the thick lymph.
Oh,
So like the swellings,
Mhm.
figwort and raw radishes.
big one.
And I do have figwort here. And I think I have a bottle right there, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
There you
Got to
go.
just pour you some in a
It
glass.
thins what again? The
So it thins. Think about circulation. If you have a very thick viscous fluid, does it go through microcirculation well? No. You want it thin to go through the tiny capillaries,
yeah,
right?
and
Mm.
it thins the. Say it again.
The radish juice will thin the lymph fluid.
Lymph fluid, okay.
Think of your lymph fluid as the toilets for your cells.
Right.
Your cells have to poop somewhere. That's the plasma / lymph.
Okay, that's important.
Really important to know that. And so when your lymph is sluggish, there's too much shit circulating and not enough water in it. Generally, there's too much particulate matter. That's the basis of viral problems right there, by the way. They call it cell exosomes, you know, stuff like that. The other thing people aren't talking about, that's the hidden elephant in the room for me, are wrong-handed isomers. Nature's trump card for synthetic stuff are the D isomer. That's why you see L-glutamine, L-tryptophan. It's the levulo-rotated right-handed molecule. But when you make it synthetically, you end up with the D form, and that causes congestion in the fluids, does it not? Because the body can't do anything with it. Can't do anything with it.
So maybe that's my problem because I take tons of supplements.
My grandmother, like, you got to make sure they're not synthetic.
Well, some are.
Yeah, you
Most
want to.
aren't, but some are.
Yeah, you want to. What I do is I do a cleanse, like a reset for 3 days to a week, no supplements.
Mhm.
And then I add them in one at a time and see what lowers my energy, causes a response. And then, you know, sometimes they need to lower your energy to like cause a reaction to occur. Like I'm on an anti-parasite one from Systemic Formulas called VRM4. What I like about systemic formulas is they address the issue that very few people do, is that if you don't get rid of the large parasites in your body, then the small parasites will flourish. Why? Because the large parasites harbor the small parasites. The small parasites live inside the large parasites. So if you have candida, but your worms in your body have candida too, and you keep curing the candida, but the worms keep pooping it back out, you're in a pattern that's not going to get any better. I thought about this long ago, so I just went for the, you know, and so they have a large parasite product, VRM1, VRM2 is small parasites, VRM3 is cell parasites, and VRM4 is micro parasites, like these teeny little ones. Did you know that there's a parasite that eats our red blood cells like donuts?
Oh,
I've seen it on Kirlian, like electron micrograph photography, cruising around. It's mortifying. Some people's anemia is parasitic anemia, blood parasites. So these are what they call herbalomic nutraceuticals is the keyword for systemic formulas. They've got a whole food branch, they're family owned, then they have some synthetic in there, and they have some whole food herbs, and then they have some whole food nutrition, like, you know, animal organs, even stuff like that too, berries and superfoods. So their VRM products, I started with one yesterday, no reaction, had two today, no reaction, knock on wood. So the first time I took this product, sick as a dog for a day. Oh, are dogs really sick? Sick as I could be. That's a little better.
what?
I don't want to be sick as a dog. I don't know what dogs are sick, you know. It's quite a statement. Like kill two birds with one stone. I like, don't say that anymore.
Yeah,
It's
no,
not
right.
good. No.
I like 5 Dog Night though. You know
So-
what that is? 5 dogs get together to keep warm.
I better like end this talk. We're
How
gonna
about
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's getting giddy.
Beet kvass.
Beet kvass. So if you can't process raw beets because the oxalic acid causes you to have diarrhea, When I ate beets 30 years ago, when I was starting my journey, it would come out of me 2 hours later in diarrhea in big chunks.
Mm.
And that was the parasites in my body saying, no fucking way, buddy. Then just flushed it right through.
Got it. Wow.
I had some cramps from the parasites getting taken out of the rotten apartment complex they were in,
Wow.
that would twist my guts into these strangled knots.
Mm.
And I'm not going to dare say it was like giving birth,
So beet
but it was
kvass
bad.
with-
So the kvass already has the oxalates processed by the bugs. Ideally, your own gut bugs process your own oxalates. That's what happened with me. So I can have all the beets and kales. You know, kale has as much oxalates as beets. Hello. No, beets are having oxalates. So's freaking kale. Shut up.
Mm.
Yeah, it's just like, so the goosefoot family is the beet family. So it's chard and beets and lamb's quarters and spinach. They're all in the goosefoot family. So they grow down by the water, ideally. Like, you know, there's free New Zealand spinach growing along the coast here for folks on the cliffs in Aptos.
Whoa.
Yeah, I got one over here called, Ellie gave it to me, the other perennial spinach. Pretty freaking cool. I forgot what it's called. So ideally, that's what we want. We want perennial kale and spinaches, and you know, and arugula will reseed if you leave it in a good area. So another way to harvest light is to have fresh plants, folks. Fresh plants out of the ground, and then this carotene conversion. Like one of the easies is beeton radish. If you want to go into synthetics a little bit, then lecithin's a good start. If lecithin doesn't work, then you can try choline and or inositol, because lecithin's like the parent molecule, and then inositol is part of lecithin, and choline's part of lecithin. And there's even another submolecule people can't sleep. It's called phosphatidylserine. And that coupled with ashwagandha will help someone sleep due to high cortisol.
I
So
take that during the day.
phosphatidylserine, people have to dose at different times. I don't have a lot of experience, maybe 10 clients. Phosphatidylserine with ashwagandha. Another teacher would put Romania in with that, the Japanese prepared Romania, or Chinese. But I digress.
Whoa.
But that's part of that rebuilding the yin. So lecithin's another way you can go. And then finally, in the herbal world, one of my favorite fat dredging herbs is Greater Celandine. That's one good option, and it's a weed. It's going behind us here. It's one, if you break the stem, it bleeds orange yellow blood, the same color as bile.
Hmm.
And Maurice Mézihieu, a French herbalist that I read his book of Men and Plants back 25 years ago, really inspired me. He was a backyard country French herbalist, second generation. And this Greater Celandine was really struck out to him as a survivor. I won't talk about why, because I digress, but it's this light thing. And so does light shine through the mud very easy? Nah. So if we got a lot of mud and muck in our body, you know, what do you think likes to live in stuck, stagnant, smelly places? Parasites. So part of harvesting the light is to get the darkness out.
Mhm.
And the more I got the darkness out of my guts, the more my trauma came out, because my trauma was actually embedded in the sludge in my gut. It's also embedded in those tight spots in your body. How do I know? Because I've been doing body work for 30 years. Hundreds and hundreds of stories like, oh, the memory just came out. Oh, grandma yelling at me, or one woman, the uncle molesting me in the pool at age 6, you know, and froze up, of course, and just, what? She'd forgotten about it for 40 years, this woman. And just holding this point in her back, she's like, I'm getting angry. It's like, you better stay there for a minute. So I just kind of hung out on this point. And she went deep for a few minutes, and she, what do you got? She's like, oh my God. She's like, went back to this memory when I was 6 in the swimming pool and my uncle was groping me. And I didn't know what to do about it, and just sort of swept it under the rug, I guess, and just forgot about it. And it resurfaced.
Mhm.
That's what I'm talking about. Awareness always goes down to the next most important thing. And you hang out with freaks like me, and guess what? There's like 20 flashlights around you suddenly. Because I got like 100 around me. I can't get away with jack, you know. And you put a good woman next to a guy like me, and you get away with even less, which is good, right? It's gold and less shadow, because the ladies,
Mhm.
oh, I don't, can I say this publicly? Probably not. There's a woman in our freedom group, and her husband's very prominent. I'll just say that, or her partner, not her husband. And I've known her a long time. So we were texting back and forth, and he's sort of, I'll give it away. So he's out doing some good stuff. Keep it at that. Don't give him away. And I text her back. I go, you got a good man, a good warrior. Sculpt him well. Sculpt him well. Because men are sort of like rough clay, and you ladies kind of set us straight. Because there's a lot of stuff, blind spots in guys that ladies have, and then ladies can get set straight by the guys because the ladies have the blind spot. The guys got
Yeah,
the,
no,
you know,
that's why I like
good.
it.
It's a good match if you're willing to take your lumps, you know. If you're willing to have your ego, the ego doesn't like to shrink. You notice that when you notice that, but that's the point, because the identity is going away. Then when it swells, like, you know, in traffic, and I get this swelling ego when the guy's trying to pass me on the right, and I get this little trickster that speeds up to not let him in, you know.
You're the guy who does that.
I did that to you yesterday.
I do that too.
You do it too?
Yeah.
I get pissed. It's like, no, I'm going as fast as I can here, you know.
I like to drive, so I'm a little egotistical. about
You
that.
understand? Oh, you get it. And that's part of the light. It's swelling. The ego is glorifying itself, right? I'm so badass. Like, none of you wants to race me over 17. I've driven it since I was 16 years old. I can
I
drive
don't know about
70
that.
around
Depending
those
upon the
corners.
car, I'll take you on.
Didn't you get any tickets?
No, oh, I used to get a few, but no, I had a race with this one guy. I never had a race like this. Like, he was ahead of me, and he saw me coming, and he would block me. Like, I was trying to get around him, you know, and he knew which lane and everything. And
Wow.
there's just those big sharp corners. You got to know how to go into them.
Yeah, 17 is not
We were doing 70 easy, you know,
Mhm.
and we would have gotten like reckless
Oh, blood
driving.
alley.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. I mean,
Yeah.
no, when I was 6 years old, I never rode a motorcycle because of this. I was in the back seat of my mom's car going over 17 up through Duality. What's that? Redwood Estates area up from San Jose. And there's a motorcycle ahead of us. And suddenly I see the motorcycle fly over off to the right. And I see a helmeted head detached from the body flying.
my God.
And I'm 6 years old,
Oh,
and the head rolls, body flies over there, and I'm watching it as we pass by.
Wow.
And I'm
That's
like,
a hard one.
That's really
Wow.
bad.
Yeah. I'm like, well, I'm never riding one of those. I said that to
Golly.
myself when I was 6, because my dad was into
Oh
motorcycles.
my God. how'd you
My
find
mom
that?
barely saw it, thank God, or she would have been freaking. But I'm freaking out. My brother saw it enough that he was freaking out, and my dad was just stone faced the whole thing.
He'd already seen enough.
He's seen enough.
I like to drive,
But
but
for you,
motorcycles,
for 6
not
years.
so much.
So 17, folks, don't, I mean, I don't mess around 17. I've had a few ego flashes in the last few years, like
They
that guy, the
built
race of
it
that
up,
guy. Like,
but-
he was fascinating because I was just, there was no one on the road, and I caught up to him, and he was like, ooh, he's like, gamer, you know, game on. So the last thing about harvesting the light is get your fat metabolism working, and then really look at, if you sunburn easy, then look at vitamin F, which is the standard process cataplex F. There are other herbs that can help you with the sun. Desert chaparral apparently has some sun effects. Do not use St. John's wort and go in the sun, though. Do not ever do that. It'll cause you to sunburn. Like, cows that have eaten St. John's wort and been in the sun get horrible welts in their bodies. So it's a photo, whatever. So don't use St. John's wort in the sun, which is ironic because it's got so much light, right, of its own. You just don't want to, you want to use it at night, not during the day. And then finally, you know, we'll talk about this, harvesting sunlight. There's this fungi thing. I'll go into this next week a little bit, eating more fungi. And I'm not really supportive of some people eating fungi because of the protein complex and their autoimmune situation. Like, I think fungi is what you don't want when you got autoimmune, but that's me.
Like reishi?
No, I'm not all of
You
them.
mean
Like,
mushrooms?
there's just certain ones like shiitakes and whatnot. They're used specifically, maitake, shiitake, they're used to lower blood cholesterol.
Oh.
So if they're causing that effect, that means they're thinning the blood on some level, and these waxy particles that we need in our system on some level to protect us from radiation, I don't want that lowered.
Wow.
So then if I get that, if I do like a vegan diet and no saturated fats, my nerves are a wreck within a week. Like, I get neuritis, I get nerve pain, because I need that insulation from the radiation around me, because I'm a type O, metabolic type, protein type, with Northern European mostly ancestry. I got one Portuguese ancestor from a great grandma, but that's only an eighth, you know. So That's why I'm dark. I got the Portuguese gene. My
Mhm.
brother got the German and the Irish gene. He's much less pale than me. So that's what melanin is. It's the compound that our body produces from these melanocytes. And guess what, folks? This is next week's talk. There's a melanocyte stimulating hormone called MSH, and it's tied in with Lyme and Epstein-Barr
No.
and
Wait,
viruses and
what is it?
candida.
What is it called?
A melanocyte stimulating
I
hormone,
think I heard that.
MSH. I got wind of this a few years back from Michael McAvoy. And that's the exciting part about next week is, so fungus and then our gut bugs clearing the waste out of our gut. That's another strategy to harvest the light. And, like, be careful, folks, what you ask for. And we were just talking about this earlier, because I had a couple of youngsters have an awakening experience, with me. And I saw one of them at Drew's memorial, this 36-year-old who's dead now. And this guy had an awakening experience, and he didn't know what to do with himself for a good 2 years.
Mm.
He just lost all motivation, because he woke up out of the matrix, and then he's like, well, what do I do now? Kind of
Yeah.
moment, because he was a baby Buddha, as my teacher would have put
Yeah.
it. So the most important thing to leave with today in terms of like harvesting the light is to make sure, especially if you have some feelings of like disassociation with reality, and because the world is waking up, and then in those first few moments of waking up, having support. That's why I'm not up on the mountain and being a hermit,
Mhm.
because I wouldn't have lasted. I probably would have, on some level.
Well, you probably already did that.
Oh, well, that person died long ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the version of Craig you see here is the one that it's like all of you, you all had your own trials and tribulations. I don't think I'm special. I just think I'm up here, the loudmouth, speaking my life, but each of you has interesting stories too.
Yeah, we don't think you are.
I mean, you can say it. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
And the last part, if you want fresh vitamin C, then I have a post on it. You'll be seeing on the social media, and it's basically, if you're looking at a plant and it's growing, and gynostemma grows about 3 to 4 inches a day when it's really cooking, is if I see a leaf that didn't exist yesterday and I see it today, that's vitamin C.
Wow.
It's the process of the plant making itself from sunlight and water and minerals and carbon dioxide in the air.
It grows like passion flowers.
But the point is that it's growing,
Yeah.
and that thing that didn't exist yesterday that's here today, that's the process of vitamin C from water. And the vitamin A, so the carotene, the green pigment, there's a green sort of carotenoid, and that one becomes vitamin A in the body with the help of some fat. So I'm still a fan of the grass-fed butter fat as the supreme fat for the body. If you're going to choose one fat, if I had to take one fat, I would focus on butter fat out of all others. You could use olive oil. That's a good one too. Not flax oil, too high in omega-3. Too high in omega-3. That's a good one. Hemp oil is a good balanced oil though, for long-term use. I think coconut oil could be a good long-term oil too, if you want to do the saturated fat vegan thing. But again, I would choose probably red palm oil over coconut oil because of the red pigment and the carotenoids in that. Coconut oil is devoid of carotenoids. Butter is very high in vitamin A.
How about avocado oil?
I'm still on the fence about that. I won't commit to saying yes or no. I was on negative no for a while because it hasn't really been produced in any mass production like it is now. So we're in a guinea pig stage with it.
What about beef tallow?
Yes, I'm for that. Beef fat's actually only 42% saturated fat. Beef fat really gets a bad rap. It's not.
42%?
Yeah, only 42% saturated fat. And if it's
Wow.
grass fed, there's actually omega-3s in the beef fat.
Does the butter have to be raw, or could you?
Ideally, it's raw, but in today's world, do the best you can.
Ghee.
Well, ghee is definitely not raw. You can't make a raw ghee. By definition, ghee is highly cooked.
Oh.
You're cooking out the butter protein and the butter sugar.
So beef tallow is not cooked?
No, it's cooked. You can get raw beef fat though. I have raw chicken fat from that Miller's farm in the freezer over here. But I'm gonna fry it up with some good stuff, some veggies and cauliflower and fried chicken fat. You kidding me? Right on. All right, you guys. Harvesting the light. Maybe I'll edit out some of that. That's a long talk. Jeez. Okay, well, you see those shadows and the light and water-soluble vitamin A. Oh, before we end, the best source: beef liver, egg yolks, butter. There isn't really a vegan provitamin A. So palm oil would be close, but that's not vitamin A. There's still a carotenoid you got to convert. But you can still do your carrots and your greens, and then make sure you get some fat with it, and the vegan fats. You got avocados and olives, and your coconuts and your cacaos and your palm oils. And you ever eaten shea butter? Anybody ever tried to eat shea butter?
Never eaten it. I'll put it on my body.
Can you eat it? I wonder if you could eat shea butter.
Supposedly you can, but
Cocoa butter is pretty yummy in recipes.
Well, yeah.
Cocoa butter.
And shea butter's got more mineral content to it.
There you go, shea butter. There's probably a lot more out there, nut oils and whatnot, that if they're raw. So there's ways to get it, but generally it's got to be animal. And it's still, as far as the data goes and as far as results, that beef liver and those livers are really way up there in the animal organs. And then the egg yolks, if you want to go just more vegetarian style, that's a great source. And then there's cod liver oil, it's another great source of A, if you're willing to take a supplement and you're a vegan. And anything else on my list there?
There was a fermented cod liver oil somebody's selling.
Yeah, it's been around forever. There's debate in my world about that company now, but I don't want to go into it because this is a public talk. But
Egg yolks be raw? I mean, uncooked?
So the thing with protein is you want it raw, and that's another conversation. But why? Because proteins are damaged when they're cooked, and most of your connective tissue is made out of protein. So if you're rebuilding a structure with damaged bricks, you're going to have an unstable structure. It's why most people, when they get old, that's why I'm still able to surf, and why when we're talking about Drew, it's because he got on board.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of raw liver earlier this afternoon before you guys were arrived, right when you got here actually, and granted I had to have some caffeine, but there's a noticeable change in when I eat the raw. I had raw tuna for lunch, and there's some sushi and raw liver for dinner, and then there's some cooked food I had, but that delicious stew, that was great. Glad I made it. I better turn this thing off now. Okay, folks, we got kind of a lot of stuff in tonight, and unfortunately, if you're not able to pick out the needle in the haystack, you got an hour and a half lecture to sit through. Bye.